All right, so today's guest on the Cart Barn podcast is Tad Moore. He's a guy you guys might know more for the putters. He's produced, but now he's kind of branched off into making hickories and has become one of the nation's leading manufacturers of hickory golf clubs. So we are happy to have him join us today. I've never played hickories. I've always wanted to because it seems like something pretty cool to do. Chris, what about you? Have you ever hit any with hickories?
I've never played a round of golf with hickories, but I have hit some balls with them, and it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty cool little deal. I've got some friends that are kind of into that, but it's just never something I've gravitated to. But you never know; might take it up someday.
I think it's really cool. Last spring over at Cypress Lakes, they had a hickories tournament, and I couldn't play. I was out of town, so I couldn't tee it up with them. But the whole vibe is pretty cool. I mean, guys dress up in knickers and ties and vests. Just it's kind of a throwback to the 1920s, I guess, 1930s, and even before that. So one of these days, I'm going to get out there and do it. But we're happy to listen to Tad talk a little bit about the hickories and his putter company. So without any further ado, here's Tad Moore.
Well, welcome to the Cart Barn. We have designer of golf clubs and putters, Tad Moore. Tad was born in Toledo, Ohio, and is now located in Selma, Alabama. Tad, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be with you guys, and I look forward to it.
Appreciate you being on with us, Mr. Moore. Transplanted Alabamian, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I still bring certain things with me, though. I'm an Ohio State fan, although I didn't go there. I went to the University of Toledo. Uh, I found it easier. I had one son went to Georgia, and one son went to Auburn, and a daughter went to Jack State. So it was just easier to keep my Ohio State.
That must be some interesting conversations during college football season.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm right where I'm at. It's probably 90% Alabama and 10% Auburn. So,
Yeah, yeah.
But if you could just maybe expound a little bit, I've read kind of your background, how you got into club making. That's not something you hear every day.
no, the primary, I guess the reason I got into it was because of my mom. So, she was, at the time I was born, she was 36 years old. So in 1941, that was pretty old. And be having a baby. And I had a brother that was almost 10 years older. So, I got taken to the golf course I guess in a bassinet or whatever, and that's where I was. And she was a really fine player. She probably was about a two handicap player, and she enjoyed her golf. And it just so happened that she had a friend that was the same way, and they'd had a baby about the same time. So my friend Jack Sawfield and I grew up together at the golf course there in Sylvania, Ohio. So that was how we got going in it. And then I was an engineering guy, and so I liked to see how golf clubs were made. And in those days, the guy in the pro shop was doing the repair work and all that, and I was fascinated by it. As I grew older, and as soon as I could, I started repairing golf clubs in my basement for all my friends. And then once I got out of school and started in a company, I was able to make golf clubs at that point in time. So it was a lot of fun growing up in it.
Were you making mostly putters back then, or had you started like with drivers?
Well, I was doing everything in my high school days and that. I was doing reshafting drivers and setting them up and fitting them to players and doing the iron work, grinding on wedges and things. So it was kind of everything. But the company I went to work for had the ability for me to do putters. So I started doing putters. So my first putters were done, and then I think in the early '70s, I visited and got to know T.P. Mills in Tuscaloosa, and maybe even late 60s. And he gave me a set of Spalding forgings that he had. And so that was my first full set of irons that I made was from a raw set of Spalding forging. So he was a good friend, quite a craftsman. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's it.
so
Go ahead,
uh,
Greg.
when when you when you look at putters, take me through the process of building a putter. And are today's putters that much better than the putters from the 60s?
That's a good question. I mean, so much of it is the player himself. When I was working with all the guys on the tour, with a milled putter, black face, you could take the sweat off your brow and wipe it on the face, and then as they would putt, you could see where they were actually hitting the ball. And usually, tour guys were hitting it in a little bit bigger than a BB size. So when they talk about great forgiveness, those guys on tour, if they're not as good at putters as those guys back then, I would be very surprised. So they're hitting it in a very small spot. So all this stuff about MOI and all that, I'm not a big believer in that. So I think there's a lot of things that can make a putter good, and MOI may not be one of them even. So
Hmm.
that's my opinion anyway.
I still
So,
have an old TP Mills putter in my basement, and an old Wilson 8802 that I go back to when I'm putting bad with my current version. I go back to those for a couple rounds, and seems to straighten me out.
Yeah, I think so because I play uh even today my modern clubs that I play with when I play moderns, they're just a set of blades, and I want to know whether I mishit the ball or not. And so, a lot of clubs today you can't tell whether you mishit it. I mean, take example the 460cc driver, the current driver, you can swing at it as hard as you want. You have to really mishit it to know whether you mishit it. So I I think putting, to me, a lot of it is visual. It's if you don't like what you're looking at, you're never going to putt good. So you got to have a good feeling when you stand over that putter and look down at it that you can make a stroke and start the ball on the line you want it on. So to me, visual is a big part of it, and of course, feel. I don't like these great big grips. I like a grip that you have more feel to.
mm-hmm.
I've learned that from a lot of guys like David Graham that feel is so important in the game, and so it's different. Let's say it that way. I mean, the marketing of all these items have created something that you can hit a putt with it, but you may not know whether you miss hit it or hit it. Kind of interesting to me.
Well, you've already thrown out some names. I signed with MaxFly and the rest of their conglomerate back around 89 or 90.
Yeah,
Um,
the deal was signed in '89, and we took the first mill putters to the tour at the December team championship, Chrysler team championship down in Florida. So that's when it all began.
and then you had a pretty good success in 91 at the Masters. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'd been working with two guys, two were two friends of mine. One was, of course, was Ian Woosnam, and the other one was Andy Bean, and they both liked the putter that an old friend of mine from Toledo was playing with, Pat Lindsay, and it was pretty much a blade putter, pretty simple to align and everything, kind of like maybe the old cash in sort of that look to it. And so at the PGA in Birmingham, I delivered both their putters, and Andy's had no offset to the head, and Ian's, of course, had a little offset to it. And so, I he was pretty much back overseas after that. But when we got to the Masters that year, his caddy came up to me and said, "I need a head cover, new head cover for your putter. And I said, what putter is he using? Because he had several. And I walked down to the putting green. There he was with that putter. And so it was quite exciting, the fact that he won with it. So, yeah, pretty amazing. And we are now good friends and, and everything. So he's a wonderful guy.
How much did that win help in your marketing that putter?
It's interesting because it was before Max, actually, when I was working on that. They didn't even have it in the lineup. And so two things happened. The Dunlop in the UK, they wanted the actual putter. So we made some for them, which was exactly the replica of the putter, except it was longer. And the guys in the US said that the putter was too long from heel to toe, and they wanted me to shorten it, and they called it, I think, S5, and they sold a good number of them. They were made by, it was a cast putter, and they were made by Coast Cast out in San Diego. So they sold a good bit of them, but I never could understand how you would want me to change something that won the Masters because somebody in marketing thought it was a little too long.
Yeah.
But marketing runs everything now anyway. So
Do you find it interesting that somebody, a pro who people, they know the name but they don't know him from Adam, and he wins with a certain putter, that people want to run out and buy that putter? I'm thinking of Jack Nicklaus when he used the oversized headed putter. That
yeah,
became all the rage, but it doesn't
yeah.
really necessarily translate to your game.
No, you're right. And you know, I was a collector of clubs as well. So I had owned several of the putters like Nicholas putted with, and I never could make them work. I mean, I didn't think it was a great putter. But Clay Long is a friend of mine, and he designed that putter. And he told me that after Nicholas won, Coast Cast, same company in San Diego, was air shipping 25,000 heads a week, at, and that they were working overtime to produce it. And so so Jack took Clay's name off the bottom of it. So one of those with Clay's name on the bottom, it's pretty much the same putter that Nicholas used. And instead, he gave Clay a Fiero GT and said,
Oh, wow.
And as you've progressed throughout your career, how did you get involved with the hickory shafted clubs, and how is that business gone?
So I was a collector of clubs. And because one thing is that I'm a big believer that there's nothing new. It's just like the Callaway bore through iron wasn't anything new. It was done in the 1800s. So I collected clubs of all types so that when I'm sitting in my office and I was looking around for an idea, I could look on a wall or in a bag and look for ideas of what had been done and see I might be able to take something from that and put it into one of my current designs. So I had a good friend in Williamsburg, Virginia, Bobby Farino, and he was a dealer in classic clubs. And I was in a shop one day over there, and he said, "We're going to play golf today." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I got a set of clubs for you can play." We went out there, and it was a set of hickories. And so I'd never played with any of my hickories. I just looked at them on the wall. And he said, "No, you got to play with them." He says, it's a very interesting game, and I think you'll learn something from playing with them. So I got home and I started putting together my own set. So I started playing with them in the 70s and 80s, and then by the early 90s I was hooked, and I became a member at Royal Troon 25 years ago, and so almost from the very beginning, all I played over there was hickories. And so we would go over, and it was really hard to find certain clubs, like a good sand wedge and things like that. And I think because during the wars, all that stuff was turned in for scrap metal and that. And so uh, we were sitting in a bar, the famous Dunvegan in St. Andrews, and the guy said to me, "Look, you just made a set of clubs for Seve Ballesteros. You can certainly make a niblick, you know." So I got home and I'd met Odie, three, um, and I called him and said, "Send me a couple putter shafts." So he did, and I made up some niblicks, and it worked. So in 2002, I tooled the first set of the hickory clubs, and then by 2003, we already had the license to use the Tom Morris name, and we had that until the Links Trust bought the Morris shop and everything, and then we
Mm.
lost that. But so we've been doing it now since 2003. So I was still doing design work for modern clubs at that time, but the hickory was very exciting. Uh,
It has there been kind of a renaissance towards the hickory shafted clubs now? It seems like there's more and more. I read more and more of hickory tournaments being played around the country.
there's hickory tournaments all around the United States and basically around the world. We supply hickories from Japan to Czechoslovakia,
Mm.
and far south is Australia. So we're shipping all over the place. And here in the States, every state has got people playing with hickories. Some of them are a lot of people, you know. And so I just got back from Gerhardt, Oregon, where they had a tournament. It was 70 players from Washington, Oregon, other states. And, you know, typically that's their number. I mean, so it's pretty amazing the growth in it. And a lot of younger people, when we first started doing this, most everybody was 50 to 60 years old. Now
Mhm.
it's a lot of younger people, and some in their late 20s and in the early 30s and that. So we get professionals coming into it all the time.
Interesting.
How do the clubs? I haven't played hickories. How do they perform as far as distances to compared to the modern clubs?
Well, the in a case of an iron, uh, loft for loft, they're basically the same. Uh, so if you have like 36-degree club in hickory and a 36-degree in modern, they're going to almost identical, almost identical. The driver, you lose about 10%. And we done a lot of testing at Cool Clubs out in Scottsdale, which is one of the greatest facilities that there is for golf. And it's about 10%. So uh, I think that's true because a lot of women are playing now. So, and I discussed with the girls how far they hit it, and I think that's pretty much true. So,
Is there do we romanticize too much about the old persimmon drivers and the crafting of those clubs as compared to today's modern mass produced heads?
well, I like to think that the golf clubs made back then were truly works of art. You know, I mean, you had individual people that were really skilled making the woods. I mean, the best you had two groups of people: the guys who were grinding clubs some in forgings, and then the people that were making the woods, they were craftsmen. And I don't believe that exists anymore. Now you just have people assembling. I mean, you get a head and a driver, it comes in, you get a weight on it, you know how to match it all up, you glue it up, put a tip on it, glue it all up, and it's done. I mean, there's no craftsmanship there, really. It's just assembling. And those days are gone, except for people like myself, you know, where we make everything. We just did 1,000 golf shafts in the last couple of weeks. You know, we
Mm.
turn them on our wood lathe, we sand them, we do everything to make them be the best in the world. Takes time, takes skill. Odie knows, in my mind, he knows better at making a shaft than anybody in the world, and so we tout that as something that that we're the best at. So
Mhm.
it's we do a lot of handwork. I mean, there's nothing that's comes in pre-manufactured except the head, and we just can't get around that. There's nobody here in the States making heads.
Yeah, so you've talked about Odie and his facility, which was in Selma, and that's how you ended up coming to Selma, Alabama.
Yes, yeah. We were living in the Grange, and we got a young couple that we knew came and wanted to buy our house, and it ended up we sold it. And so then I said to my wife, "Where do you want to go?" And she said, "Well, one of our best friends will be moving to Selma." And I said, "Well, that's where I get my shafts. Why don't you go over there and see what you can find for a house?" So she came over and found a house in the old historical district, and we negotiated with the owner, and we moved. So
Mm.
it's been good for us. We like it here. So
Oh, good.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your operation. How many people work for you, and how long does it take to make a set of clubs?
Well, there's a grand total of myself and Odie and another gentleman that helps us. So not a lot of people working here, but a lot of knowledge. And
Mm.
so we've discussed trying to find somebody that we could bring in, do more for it and help out and learn about it. But right now it's just us, and it takes about a week, and that's one of the reasons is because it takes time to. We use long cure epoxies, so we use a long cure epoxy, and then we also have to stain the wood after we hand sand it to everything to flex, because we check it for flex by using a deflection board and still the frequency meter. And so then you go about, you know, putting it all together, and we hand wrap the grip, and that's all done. It takes time. So I like to tell people, give us a week and we'll get them to you. So
Yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
Actually, to me, that's a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
I would expect it to take a little longer.
yeah. No, I mean, let's put it. We've done it a long time now, and so we're really good at it. So, I mean, it's when you get into certain clubs, it can slow you down a little. We make a replica of clubs that were made out of aluminum in the late 1800s, and we call them play clubs. And so those clubs come in as a casting from a source, and so we have to drill the hosel, ream it, have to grind the whole head shape, score the face, and everything. Now that club is a day in itself. So yeah, so there are things that can move it around a little bit, but we're pretty good at it now.
I'm sure you are. Have you seen a tremendous rise in orders in the past several years?
We've seen more. I want to say we've seen different kind of ordering. We For a long time we were trying to source business where they were having 100th anniversary, and it was just really difficult. We tried going to the PGA show, but it just didn't work. It was too costly, and we didn't get enough business to really justify it. But we are starting to see that a little bit now. We did for the Congressional Golf Club back east. We did their 100th anniversary putter this year. So we're doing some of that now, and that is a nice boost for us when we get that. And so we're hopefully starting to get more 100th anniversaries. So we'll start to do that again a little more this fall. We'll start contacting them and trying to get some more of that business. But I think our flow of orders is growing some. It's not leaps and bounds, but it is growing. To answer that question, yeah.
I think as more people maybe play in a hickory tournament as a one-off, they find out they play and they like it and they want to play more, and that's kind of where I thought that might go with your business as more people get involved or become aware of it.
You're right about that. That is true. There are people that supply clubs for like anniversaries and things like that.
One thing we haven't explored is your ability to create putters for presidents. That's kind of got to be an honor.
Yes, we've done that a few times.
Mhm.
We done for numerous presidents, and then just within the last few years, we were lucky to get our governor here in town to get Odie to make one of his dad's old putters and give it to Trump. So that was a nice thing for our little business here for Odie, and yeah, that was great. So yeah, I've loved doing that, and I think the last one that we did was for Obama, and we did for President Bush. They were both here in Selma at the same time, and we did a putters for both those people. Of course, Obama's left-handed, so but yeah, we
A
made him mill putters. Yeah,
little bit of pressure there, making a putter for a president.
yes, definitely. Particularly, you're hand making it, and so when you start stamping it, you can't make a mistake because it takes too long to weld it up and send it back off to get stuff done to it. So got to do it right the first time. So, but I understand President Bush, in fact, gave that to a charity out in Dallas area, and they raised a lot of money with it. So that was great. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Couple things too that we haven't touched on is, in addition to your putters, is what you are probably known most for, and then but you created some wedges and a driver or two, right?
yeah. The driver I think you're talking about is the one that Sean Pfister won a long drive with,
Mm-hmm.
and that's an interesting story. We were at the PGA show, and Sean was a Dunlop guy, Maxwell guy, and he came in the booth and he's looking around and he sees this driver and he takes it down from off the wall and he says, "Boy, this looks really great. Can I take one?" And so I think the one he took was maybe like 8 degrees loft. And next thing you know, we get a call. Hey, I really love this thing. It goes a long way and all that. So now I had to start working with him to make them, stronger loft and stronger to hold up with his impact. And but he won with that driver from that one, and then we did another one. I did another one for him, and he won again. So that was pretty impressive. Yeah, I really like him. I mean, he's a great guy. Yeah. His great claim to fame was he could hit it in the fairway, 360 or more all the time. He would, if you gave him three balls, he'd probably fit all three balls into the grid. And so if they ever had a test, maybe even today, to hit it in the grid, I bet he'd beat most of them. So, but we did wedges. We did a lot of wedges, and we started doing wedges in 1991, and then up through that time, uh, we were doing them up at Hoffman, up in Tennessee, the forgings and that, and we worked doing them. And I mean, I had a great guys to work with. Everybody from Uzi again, on down to our regular staff guy. We had 38 guys playing the clubs, which is the Australian blades, which was amazing. And nobody got paid to play these, and which max, they gave a hat or visor and a ball deals work.
Mm-hmm.
When they played these clubs in play, they they were not paid to play, so it was pretty impressive. So, and we had a great line of wedges, went for a long time. And in fact, some guys in the UK still have me. I still have a few of the old ones from the '90s, and they still play with them over there. They don't care if they're illegal or not, but I mean, they're probably legal. But I mean, they because who knows now about the groove and all that. So, but they were great. Yeah, it was a really nice addition to the line. So
Mm-hmm.
we had the putters. we had the wedges, then we had all the irons, and then I was still making persimmon woods. And David Frost won a big tournament with one of my persimmons, uh, and so it was a good time working with him.
Gosh, you've worked with a lot of well-known PGA Tour players, haven't you?
I did, yeah, absolutely. And Mark Carnival just passed away,
All that.
and Mark was one of my good friends, and he only tournament he won in Chattanooga was with one of my putters.
Hmm.
Uh, and every team, he'd shake my hand and have a big smile on his face. He was
Well,
a
that brings up a question. You've talked about Carnival winning with one of your putters and Ian Woosnam, and are there any other significant wins by professionals or amateurs that we don't know about that were using your equipment?
well, Seve was noted for using my putter, and to be honest, I don't know how he won with it, but I'm sure he won with it. But yeah, I mean, in the '90s, I had somebody in play almost every week. I mean, Steve Pate won 3 or 4 times with one of my putters. There's just a lot of guys, and I don't remember all the names.
Hmm.
So I do need to sit down at some point and recreate all those names. Just go back on the list. Sluman. I mean, I had Greg Norman using my putters. I mean, there was just a lot of guys using my putters. I had 72 players, so I had a lot of guys out there using my putters every week. So
Yeah, you think about Alabama. It's not a huge state, and and I know at the time you weren't here, but having your putters and Odie's and TP Mills and the numbers of players that were using all of those clubs is pretty neat story.
yeah, it really is because I was sitting in Lagrange, Georgia, just a couple miles from Alabama. You
Right.
know, and so it you had a great group of Southern guys. And I think that the to me the key ingredient back then is that these guys, when I first started in the '70s, they'd pay me $150 for a putter, and I picked that price because that's what TP charged them. So uh, it was great to be out there. I mean, he wasn't out there doing what I was doing, but I was out there trying to get him to use my stuff. And so there was a big group of guys from the South that was easy to approach, and they're all really great players. So
Mhm.
I mean, Jay Haas, from Greenville, and all the great guys from the South. So, and my friend Pat Lindsay, who was on the tour for a long time, only won once, but he introduced me to all those guys. So that was a great in for me because he'd take me over and introduce me to John Mahaffey or whatever. So that was really great. So
And then I think there's an association somewhere with Scotty Cameron may have worked with you or for you on a project or two early on in his career.
well, Scotty left Ray Cook. He worked for Ray Cook, which was owned at that time by a fellow I knew uh, by the name of Bob Bauer. And Scotty moved into a little office right across from where Rick Cooper was making all my milled putters. And he didn't have any business. He had sued Bob. I think he thought he was going to be able to start stuff right away, but it just didn't happen. So when we made a milled putter back then, there had to be handwork done to it. You had to remove the sharp edges and things like that. So there was some polishing and some things that took place to it before it went in at that time and got black oxide on it. So I asked him if he'd supervise the people working for us. So he didn't have anything to do, so he did. And so he experienced that. And then, of course, I'd come out there and I was doing some of my handmaids out there for tour players. and of course the guy doing the finishing was there. So I'd be out there and be doing custom work. So he got to see how that was being done. And so I'm sure he learned, from his time working with me and working with them to make the putter. So, and I'm sure it helped him out. He was a young guy, and and so we I mean, I haven't seen him in a long time, but we don't have a bad relationship. So, I mean, he got lucky that Titleist decided to buy his business, and at the same time, I got unlucky because Maxwell decided to quit making golf clubs. So it was just one of those things that happened.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Neat story.
As you kind of look to the future, where is club making going as far as putters, and do you foresee can anything even get better than what it is now?
Well, I started another interesting thing in putters, and that was besides being the guy that brought mill putters to the world, as I like to think of myself, but face technology. So I started putting grooves lines in the face because when they switched from the wound ball to the molded ball, the ball reacted different, had a different feel, and the cover was different. Now it was like a urethane type cover. So I developed a line technology, and I had it proven by a gentleman out in Texas, and so it does work. So that's one thing. I think that the the face technology and the relationship of the ball and the face is still yet to be developed to the best, to the maximum. I'm a big believer that the dimples on a ball can cause the ball to leave the putter face incorrectly, maybe offline a little bit, and it it doesn't make a difference too much if it's a foot or so, but if it's 3 feet, 10 feet, it might make a big difference in going in or hitting the lip and lipping out. So I think that technology is out there. And in fact, I'm working with a company right now. We will introduce some really great putter designs, I think this year at the PGA show. That's our intention anyway. So I think, I'm going to continue working on making it better so the ball rolls a little better off the putter head and better visual because I'm a big believer so much in visual. Uh, So that'll be what I'll be working on for the next couple of years.
Beautiful. I guess I would ask you, do you have a story that we haven't touched on you'd like to share or that would be of interest?
Oh well, I one of my best friends is Sandy Lyle, and I like to tell the story about how we were having dinner one night, and I said, "Have you ever played hickories?" He says, "Only when I was a child." And I said, "Well, would you like to try?" And so I made him a set of clubs and just became hooked on it. And I think that's all he does now over in Scotland is play with his hickories. He's a two-time world hickory champion over
Mm.
there, and he's a great promoter of the game. And I think he has a big influence on people because they hear him talk about it. So for my hickory business, having him involved in hickory is a great thing, and he's a great friend. I mean, no better guy than Sandy Lyle. So,
That's a great story. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing and thank you for some of your time. Um, People want to get in touch with you. How can they do that?
well, we're here in Selma, and our website is tadmore.com, and we're right on the river here, and just our name and everything's on the website. Phone number's there. Give me a call if you got a question. So,
Well, Mr. Moore, thank us again for your time. I'm up in Decatur, and I'm going to make a drive down to Selma here soon and come see you and see your facility.
yeah, that'd be great. Love to have you.
And I look forward to seeing you at the PGA show next January.
All righty. Take care, gentlemen.
Thanks. Have a great day.
So want to thank Tad Moore for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us on the Cart Barn podcast. Pretty fascinating, interesting discussion about his doings these days.
Yeah, Tad's a really great guy. He's very knowledgeable. Hope we can have him back on the podcast. Since we recorded this, Tad's been under the weather a little bit. So, Tad, we hope you're feeling better. And we hope you guys are enjoying the Cart Barn podcast. And we'll catch you next week with another episode and another exciting guest on the Cart Barn.